for joining us. Just time for a quick recap of the week, and we begin tonight with Donald Trump, President of the United States and the love of Melania's life. Trump had himself a bit of an up and down time this week. On the downside, his former lawyer, Michael Cohen, sought new counsel, prompting many to speculate that he's about to flip on Trump. Now, why would he do that? I think a random New Yorker probably expressed it best.
Hey, it's that guy that's going to jail. Awesome, there you go, bro.
Who says New Yorkers aren't friendly? Sure, we might not say hello to you, but we will always give you a good luck in the big house, you piece of shit, when the situation demands it. But Trump's week actually began with the eyes of the world upon him as he met with this cutie patootie for a historic summit. And if you listen to Trump, it was a huge success.
After landing at Joint Base Andrews, President Trump tweeted, "Everybody can now feel much safer than the day I took office. There is no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea," adding, "Sleep well tonight."
OK, so for the record on that, Donald Trump telling me I can sleep well tonight is like the Grim Reaper telling me to have a happy birthday. His presence is the reason I will not. Now, unfortunately, the deal Trump made with Kim Jong-un was pretty underwhelming. They agreed to work toward complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, which isn't just ambiguous compared to the multiple previous agreements involving North Korea, it's also close to meaningless. In fact, what America essentially got out of this deal appears to be something of a Trump specialty, something that I'm going to call the ice cream blowjob, where he announces something that sounds great, but when you really think about it, isn't actually anything. But perhaps the genuinely remarkable thing about the summit was the deference that Trump happily showed to his counterpart. Because while diplomacy always involves a certain amount of sucking up to horrible people, Trump went above and beyond.
Really, he's got a great personality. He's a, funny guy. He's a very smart guy. He's a great negotiator. I think he liked me, and I like him. He's smart, loves his people. He loves his country. He wants a lot of good things, and that's why he's doing this.
OK, so just quickly on that. No, he doesn't. No, he isn't. No, he's not. No, he isn't. No, he didn't. No, he isn't. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. And that's not why he's doing it. And look, I'm not going to say that part of Trump's admiration for Kim is that he wishes he could be a dictator as well. I'm going to let him say that.
He's the head of a country, and I mean, he is the strong head. Don't let anyone think anything different. Right. He speaks and his people sit up at attention. I want my people to do the same.
That's right. That's right. That is the President of the United States expressing a wish that people would model themselves after the malnourished population of North Korea. Now, maybe he just meant that White House staff should sit up. Maybe he meant everyone should. But either way, it's clear that the President wishes he was a dictator, which is a dire realisation right up there with the robots have become sentient or the cat has power of attorney. Wow, how the fuck did we get here? But of course, the last few days have sadly been dominated by this story.
Growing national outrage about children separated from their parents who crossed into the country illegally. Nearly 2,000 children have been separated from their parents under the administration's zero-tolerance policy in the last 6 weeks.
That's right. Thousands of children have been forcibly taken from their parents after a policy shift was put into action last month by US Attorney General and least fun thing to find in a Kinder egg, Jeff Sessions. Sessions basically started a policy of incarcerating people who cross the border illegally, knowing full well that that incarceration would mean they were separated from their children, many of whom are less than 10 years old, with no clear plan as to when they might be reunited. And that is objectively awful, and yet Trump inexplicably argued that Sessions had no choice.
He's following laws, very simply, that were given to us and forced upon us by the Democrats.
But there's no law that says orphans have to be separated at the border.
The Democrats gave us the laws. Now, I want the laws to be beautiful, humane, but strong.
OK, so first, beautiful, humane, but strong? That is not how you describe a law. That's how you describe a Viola Davis character in a movie called It Hasn't Even Been Written Yet, but You'll Still Win the Oscar. Also, Democrats did not give them these laws because, and I cannot stress this enough, there is no law that suddenly required separating parents from their children. This was the result of a deliberate policy choice by Jeff Sessions, a man so small he can wear, and this is true, a raspberry as a hat. That's a fact. And it's a little weird that Trump tried to distance himself from this decision because Sessions doubled down on Thursday, saying that this command came right from the very top.
I would cite you to the Apostle Paul and his clear and wise command in Romans 13 to obey the laws of the government because God has ordained the government for his purposes.
So again, it's not a law, and also the Bible isn't a government document. From a policy perspective, he might as well be citing green eggs and ham, saying, we must keep children in a box, we must keep them with a fox, which would be a terrible policy, especially depending on the height of the fox. Children should be kept away from foxes above a certain height because they're very weird and scary. Hashtag no tall foxes. And Romans 13 is possibly the worst Bible passage to bring up, since it was regularly invoked in Civil War times by defenders of slavery. And I know that you're probably thinking, wait. He wouldn't align himself with slave owners, even accidentally. Not Jefferson Beauregard Sessions of Alabama. Well, I'm sorry, but he did. And when Sarah Huckabee Sanders was asked about Sessions' Bible defense, she backed him up.
I can say that it is very biblical to enforce the law. That is actually repeated a number of times throughout the Bible.
So, A, not a fucking law. And B, lots of things are said in the Bible, but that doesn't mean you should do them. At one point, the Bible demands that the head of government get 100 foreskins, but I don't think that Sanders is looking for Congress to gather together and start slicing dicks. And the Trump administration might want to go a little easy on holding the Bible up as a moral code. Because let's remember, the Bible is not a big fan of adultery, gluttony, coveting your neighbour's wife, pride, or wrath. What I'm saying here is, you probably shouldn't use the Bible to justify separating children from parents. But if you do, maybe make sure that you're not already breaking so many of its rules that God has to write an extra commandment that says, I was fucking serious. And now, this.
And now, Senator Chuck Schumer is caught in an endless graduation speech time loop.
When I was seated at college graduation, I had just learned that I had won a scholarship to travel all around the world. At the same time, I had met a girl and I fell in love. And I was torn. Do I go around the world on the all-expense-paid scholarship for a whole year? Or do I stay home with the girl, my first true love? Class of 2018, what would you have done? Class of 2017? Class of 2016? 2015? 2014? 13? 12? 11? 2005? What would you have done? I stayed home with the girl. She dumped me before Labor Day. There I was. No scholarship. No trip around the world. No girl. No girl. Girl. No girl. But somehow I picked myself up, dusted myself off, and a few years later, I found myself seated at graduation once again. Found myself seated at graduation once again. Once again. Once again. Once again. Once again. When I was seated at college graduation, I had just learned that I had won a scholarship to travel all around the world. All around the world.
Moving on. So, our main story tonight concerns China, the country responsible for huge technological advances, and yet it still can't seem to get pandas to fuck. China is a gigantic and consequential country where roughly 1 out of every 5 people on Earth live. It is also the place that Trump has been ranting about for years.
China is killing us. What China is doing to us is horrible. China cheats. They devalue their currency. We can't continue to allow China to rape our country, and that's what they're doing.
Okay, so even in the context of a metaphor, the word rape is pretty jarring. As verbs go, it's not exactly bandied about. It's like if Trump said Congress is really toe-fucking me on this border wall. The underlying point is clear. Why he chose to express it that way is not. And yet, for all that Trump talks about China, it seems that he's very much in the process of learning about it. Just watch what happened when microphones picked up this exchange with China's president during a state visit back in November.
China, 5,000 years it goes back, right? Seems to be 5,000. Right? 5,000 at least. And I guess the oldest culture, they say, is Egypt at 8,000. 8,000.
Now, if you're worried that Trump actually learned something there, rest assured, the only thing he took away from that conversation was that Egypt is older and therefore less fuckable than China. OK, great. Note to self, don't fuck Egypt, too old. But The truth here is, a lot of us are probably underinformed about China, and that's something that its leaders have historically been absolutely fine with. Deng Xiaoping famously had a lay-low international strategy, summed up by the saying, hide your strength and bide your time. But in recent years, there has been a significant shift regarding that, because when China's current leader, Xi Jinping, assumed the highest office in the land, he said this.
China needs to learn more about the world. The world also needs to learn more about China.
You know what? He's right. We probably should talk more about China. We should probably have talked more about it on this show, especially considering we've done roughly 4,000 different stories on New Zealand and multiple pieces on a testicle receptacle from the 2005 Russell Crowe film Cinderella Man. So tonight, let's talk about China, and let's put America aside for most of this piece and talk instead about China on its own terms, because it's been going through seismic social, economic and political changes which have happened head-spinningly quickly, and many of them centre on its leader, Xi Jinping, who just recently tightened his grip on power.
The most dramatic political change in China in decades, a vote to scrap term limits for China's president. The move clears the way for Xi Jinping to stay in power indefinitely and possibly for life. Of nearly 3,000 ballots, only 2 voted against the unprecedented move.
3,000 to 2, which means after that vote, there were 2 members of Chinese parliament thinking, whoopsie, I really thought that would go the other way. Maybe an edible arrangement will smooth things over with the man who's now emperor for life. And that followed on the heels of what was arguably an even bigger change. The fact that last October, Xi's political doctrine, known as Xi Jinping thought, was enshrined in the party's constitution. And that may not sound like much to you, but it's roughly the equivalent of Donald Trump making himself a founding father and including Donald Trump thought into the constitution, which would mean that historians in the future would have to pass the meaning of, while Bette Midler is an extremely unattractive woman, I refuse to say that because I always insist on being politically correct. And Xi's consolidation of power has been aided by the fact that, unlike many of his predecessors who've tended to be dull bureaucrats, he has gone out of his way to form a cult of personality about himself. For a time, state media called him Xi Dada or Uncle Xi, both of which are objectively weird names for an adult to call another adult, but fantastic names for a pair of hairless cats. Xi Dada, Uncle Xi, dinner's ready, you creepy weirdos. And Xi carefully presents a man-of-the-people image. His origin story is famous in China. Born into an elite family, his father fell from grace, and like many during Mao's Cultural Revolution, Xi was sent to work in a rural village, a place which has now become a tourist trap.
The smartly dressed tour guide shows us where Xi slept. An old picture on the wall. We see a well he helped dig and a sewing shop he set up. Old farmers who knew Xi back then still roam about, the pseudo-mascots of this bizarre theme park.
Yeah, that is a bizarre theme park. And I say that knowing full well that this country's most beloved theme park features vomit-inducing teacups and a massive pantsless sailor duck with no genitals. And Xi's branding isn't confined to tourist attractions. State media has also featured folksy moments like this video of him ordering pork buns at a Beijing restaurant. Now, that visit was huge news in China. And that can be hard to believe because our politicians eat junk food in front of us all the time. You can find photos of 12 of the last 12 presidents shoving ice cream into their faces. It's actually legitimately challenging to find a single photo of Obama where he is not about to inhale half a pint of vanilla. I didn't even remember that he'd been demolishing a waffle cone during the Bin Laden raid, but clearly I'd remembered it wrong. I was wrong. But the reasons for Xi's popularity go beyond marketing himself as a cuddly Xi Dada that you can grab a pork bun with. Because for starters, he is riding an economic wave that long precedes him. Over the last 30 years, China's GDP growth has averaged nearly 10% a year, making it the fastest sustained expansion by a major economy in history, which has enabled more than 800 million people to lift themselves out of poverty. And many in China's growing middle class are pretty content with how things have been going.
The tremendous public optimism is striking. Everyone is doing better than their parents did in their day.
I think we'll be able to move to a bigger house within the next 5 years. And I expect my life to improve a lot. Whatever happens, I'm very optimistic about the future.
Wow. A sense of optimism about the future. I've got to say, as a British person, I just find that utterly incomprehensible. If you look up optimism in the OED, and this is true, the definition simply reads, no. So for many in China, things are going undeniably well, but Xi has even greater ambitions, and I'd like to focus on two massive signature projects, one global and one domestic. First, there's his so-called Belt and Road Initiative, a plan which is absolutely gigantic in scope. Basically, it involves China spending $1 trillion on infrastructure projects in more than 60 countries, things like ports, bridges and roads, with the idea that it could eventually span international land and sea routes and reshape global trade with China at its centre. To hear China tell it, it is the most ambitious infrastructure project in modern history. They've even produced an English-language propaganda video to tell the whole world about it.
When traders open up, that's when the sharing starts. Resources changing hands and shipping out of ports. Ideas start to flow and friendships start to form. Then seems impossible. Oh, becomes the norm. The future's coming now. The Belt and Road is how.
OK, if I could just interrupt this irritating old Navy commercial hawking $1 trillion infrastructure plan. I know that you're probably thinking right now, if I have to listen to one more second of that, it's going to be stuck in my head all week. Well, just be thankful that you haven't heard the rap break. Until now.
Culture exchange, we trade in our wealth. We connect with our heart, is the strength of our health. With our lines and our cables, diplomacy tables, we share in a world of prosperity. Oh! The future's coming now.
OK, stop. I can't take it anymore either. They've basically made communist cars for kids. That is unforgivable. Now, it's too early to say whether the Belt and Road is going to be a success, but Xi's second bold project has already seen results, because he's undertaken a massive crackdown on political corruption, a long-standing grievance among Chinese citizens. It's led to the investigation and punishment of hundreds of thousands of government officials, some at the very top of the party. And this has been widely celebrated, with state media even producing a crackdown-themed computer game.
The People's Daily, a Communist Party mouthpiece, released a computer game where users can give electric shocks to corrupt officials.
Well, that's fun! What could possibly be sinister about being invited to electrocute prisoners in a government-issued game? That is the most entertaining way to package something disturbing since FDR's smash hit board game, Candyland. Just kidding, it's a Japanese-American internment camp. And this is where we reach the point of the story that you kind of knew was coming, because so far, everything that I've shown you is what Xi Dada wants you to know about China. But there is a lot of troubling stuff under the surface. For instance, conveniently for Xi, some of those swept up in the corruption purge were his political rivals, and those accused were often funneled into a system that's been described as a secretive extra-legal process where interrogators seek to extract confessions, sometimes through torture. And it's worth knowing that those term limits that he successfully eliminated were put in place for a pretty good reason, specifically to avoid another Mao, under whose regime some horrific things happened in China, from a collectivised farming attempt that was responsible for at least 45 million deaths, to a cultural revolution that was estimated to have killed at least another million, to his belief that this swimsuit was flattering, which I realise, now that I say it out loud, really doesn't belong with the other two in that list. The point here is, Xi is actively removing the post-Mao guardrails that were put in place. And while China has never exactly been known as a haven for free expression, he has clamped down noticeably on any form of dissent whatsoever.
There is dissent online, and China's censors are working hard to quash it. They temporarily banned the use of phrases such as personality cult and my emperor, and also references to Winnie the Pooh, a character long used to mock Xi Jinping based on an apparent resemblance.
It's true. It's true. Apparently, Xi Jinping is very sensitive about his perceived resemblance to Winnie the Pooh. And I'm not even sure it's that strong a resemblance, to be honest. But the fact he's annoyed about it means people will never stop bringing it up. Trust me, Xi, if your face even remotely resembles that of a beloved cartoon character, the smart move here is to lean in. And clamping down Clamping down on Winnie the Pooh comparisons doesn't exactly project strength. It suggests a weird insecurity in him, and experts say that Xi is deeply concerned that public opinion will turn on him. China's economy is already slowing, and Xi is reportedly haunted by the spectres of the Arab Spring and the Soviet Union's collapse. And that paranoia may be why he's so anxious to micromanage Chinese daily life. The government has a list of untrustworthy people, which can restrict citizens' ability to travel, buy a house, or take out loans. And over the next few years, there are plans to take things much further.
Every Chinese citizen is being assigned a social credit score, a fluctuating rating based on a range of behaviors. It's believed that community service and buying Chinese-made products can raise your score. Fraud, tax evasion, and smoking in non-smoking areas can drop it. If a score gets too low, a person can be banned from buying plane and train tickets, real estate, cars, and even high-speed internet.
Yeah, you could be cut off from high-speed internet, although that could actually be a huge opportunity for the finest purveyors of shitty low-speed internet. I'm talking, of course, about AT&T, one of America's least popular corporations, and also, as of this week, our parent company. So, goodbye, everyone. It's been fun. And look, it gets much, much darker here. In fact, Xi's crackdown on human rights is apparently the most intense since Tiananmen Square. And that is not good, because Tiananmen Square is on the short list of places so infamous you don't even need to describe what happened, like Chernobyl, or Jonestown, or that one cheesecake factory we can't go to anymore. And Xi has intensified government suppression of certain religions. In one province, Christians have been told to take down the image of Jesus and hang portraits of Xi instead. Something I've also done, by the way. See, I think it really ties the room together. It's a nice accent piece. And a Muslim population known as Uyghurs have been singled out for dystopian levels of surveillance and persecution. Here is one man talking about a form that the government had him fill out.
This piece of paper was sent to everyone. People had to fill it out. They asked things like, if you are Uyghur, if you have a job, if you have a passport, if you pray. All these answers were turned into a scoring system. They would categorize people into safe, regular, and unsafe people.
Yeah, and that's pretty chilling, because generally speaking, whenever people are placed on lists, it's not really turned out well for anyone involved. Many of history's greatest monsters put people on lists. Nixon, the Nazis, Santa, all of these animals did that. And look, sure enough, if you are deemed unsafe for whatever reason, you're in big trouble, because China has incarcerated Muslims in re-education camps, with as many as 800,000 individuals in facilities which reportedly aim to rewire the political thinking of detainees, erase their Islamic beliefs, and reshape their very identities, making Uncle Xi less like your fun uncle and more like your creepy uncle who imprisons 800,000 people in his basement. And if you want to see what it looks like when Xi Jinping thought gets put into Xi Jinping practice, just take the story of Nobel Peace Prize winner Liu Xiaobo. He was imprisoned in 2009 for writing a pro-democracy manifesto, and last summer he died in state custody. And even China seemed concerned about how that might look.
Fearing domestic backlash, government censors went to work. Social media posts mentioning Liu's name were deleted. Online searches with his name were blocked. Even simple candle emojis were deemed illegal on some sites. CNN's signal in China has been cut by government censors every time we mention his name.
Exactly. The Chinese media wouldn't allow mentions of a Nobel Peace Prize winner's name, which is a pretty intense level of censorship, but it's also my personal policy towards Guatemalan activist Rigoberta Menchú. Do not bring her up around me. She knows what she did. You know what you did, Rigoberta. You know what you did. I don't want to hear her name on your lips. That's not what this speech is about. The point is, what happened to Liu Xiaobo and his wife, who is still under house arrest, is absolutely tragic. Although, to his credit, he didn't go down without taking a final swing.
One of the last known photos of Liu was with his wife, Liu Xia. At first glance, unremarkable, but notice the mugs they're holding. Yep, that's Winnie the Pooh on there. Perhaps a final subtle act of defiance.
Yeah, good for them. Good for them, because I think deep down, we all know when you need to really tell someone to go fuck themselves, why not do it with a mug? Right? The whole point here is, under Xi Jinping, China is becoming more authoritarian just as it has major plans for expansion onto the world stage. So the era of hide and bide is over, and the era of do as we say may be dawning, because China has significant economic leverage, and it has been using that to silence criticism, even when criticism is very much warranted.
The European Union hardly squeaks about human rights anymore. Certainly the British don't. You don't get much on Tibet either, because whenever anyone raises any of these issues, China turns around and says, do you want to do business or not?
Of course, because China knows no matter how badly they behave, the world will still want to do business with them. They're like Facebook. Oh, I'm sorry, you don't like us mining your data and undercutting your democracy? What exactly are you fuckers going to do about it? Mail people printed out photos of your meals you ate? Call your friends and tell them happy birthday in out loud words? I don't think so. Go fuck yourself. And here is where, having set America aside at the start, we should bring it back in, because it is arguably more important than ever that America be strategic and tactical about how to deal with China. Sadly, those qualities are not hallmarks of this guy, who couldn't play chess for longer than 29 seconds without screaming, "My horse eats your big lady," and pouring nacho cheese all over the board. Trump is blowing up the traditional alliances that have helped influence Chinese behaviour on important issues, and that has been great news for Xi Jinping, as has the fact that human rights don't really seem to be a big Trump priority. In fact, just hours after the death of Liu Xiaobo, even as his administration issued condolences, Trump himself said this.
President Xi is a terrific guy. I like being with him a lot, and he's a very special person.
Wow, that was not the best time to give Xi Jinping a pat on the back. It's the equivalent of saying how much you love Kevin Spacey in American Beauty right now. First, you shouldn't. It was objectively terrible. And second, you're picking the worst possible time to bring that up. The point is, Trump is leaving a vacuum on the world stage, and China is more than happy to fill it by telling the world its story and leaving out some very important details. So for everyone's benefit, if they're going to send out cuddly propaganda videos about Xi Jinping and his achievements, someone might want to make a companion piece that kind of rounds out the picture.
China's expanding now. It's growing big and strong. Let's learn about it now in this annoying song. They have a president, some call him Uncle Xi, but he can fuck with you instead of democracy. This is the China Xi. Oh, doesn't want you to see. Oh, he'd rather shield from you. Oh, the shitty things they do. Oh,
compare him to this, and he will get pissed. You'll end up on an untrustworthy list. But jailing his fellows can't alter what's true. My man Xi Jinping looks like Winnie the Pooh.
This is the China Xi. Oh, doesn't want you to see. Oh, and that's the reason why. Oh, you'd better watch the sky.
That's our show. Thanks so much for watching. See you next week. Good night.
Hi.